All right. Looks like we are live, I hope. Welcome, everybody, anybody who might be watching. We are going to delve into some perspectives today that a lot of people are talking about, but I think I want to frame it in a way that makes makes a lot more sense to a lot of folks because I'm going to provide you with a lot of information. Before I do that, as I'm getting started here, I should let you all know I do have Entropy now. I am streaming both on YouTube and DLive. I don't know how well it will work because I'm directly using OBS and I am not at all using the restream systems. And I literally just set this up like within the last hour. So I finally set it up 10 minutes ago. So I don't know what I'm doing, of course, when it comes to streaming, which is why I don't typically do such a thing. But I want you guys to be able to see me on multiple platforms if you want to be on other platforms such as DLive or Entropy. And also, I'm not ever planning to give money to CorpoTube. And if I ever want to take donations or anything, I need a way to do that. So Entropy is a great source for that and a very, very open source for free speech as far as I'm concerned. So that's very important. Let's see here. And do a couple things here. Look at the chat. Oof, the echo. All right, man. Is it still there? Because if it's there, I might need to stop streaming on DLive. That's probably what it is. Or I need to change my settings, which means I can come back and do that tomorrow. So, is the echo still there? Is it getting fixed? Please tell me. The Dull Hawk. All right, well, I might have to work this out and change some settings. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the DLive today and hopefully, and the Entropy, and hopefully we'll just keep going with YouTube, and I'll get this worked out. So, we are done over there for the day. That's okay, guys, because this is how it has to work out. I have to do a little experimentation, right? Because I am not usually running this stuff when we do the Ends Justify the Memes. Thank you, by the way, for showing up there last night. Had a fun show, I thought. Unfortunately, Michael was having internet problems as things go, and, we'll just have him back, which is fine, because I find the guy quite interesting. I like talking about spiritual matters, and that's kind of part of what I want to talk about and address today, because we have a huge scaling problem. And I mean, the issues that we talk about quite frequently, those of us who do streams, those of us in this community who are talking, we're understanding that things are just too big and people are too unaccountable and the federal government is completely and utterly out of control, right? We know that. There is no sense making in how the federal government can be so large and bloated and so disconnected from its people. There's no sense making to that, because it's going to happen when you have someone leading you that you've never seen before, except for on TV, that you've never talked to. They don't care about your interest. It's going to be basically about them gaining power. It's going to be about them enforcing their will upon everyone else. When we remain local, we maintain accountability. Let's see, Dollhawk. Get with Don sometime for all the boomerisms. He seems to know what's going on. Yeah. No, I excuse me. I can run dual stream through my graphic card. I just have to set in the proper setting. I didn't think doing it on the fly was going to be a good thing for OBS. And is the echo fixed? Because that's a very important thing to make sure we take care of there. So let me get, I have a chat and a pop out. Still echoing. Well, there's only a few other options I can do, and that is restart the stream, which I prefer not to do. I can unplug my mic real quick. Has that changed anything? Is there still an echo? Let's solve these little problems first before we get too far ahead. This new mic holder of mine, too, is quite funky. In any case, okay, sweet, man, sweet. Yeah, something in there in the interface was working. I am going to, tomorrow, I'll stream, and I will make sure that OBS, I guess, I'll try to see if OBS is running through DLive. Or we'll run DLive and YouTube fine. Unfortunately, this is a reoccurring problem, actually. I'll video record, right, as I normally do, and there's an echo, and for some reason, OBS ends up screwing with my mic, and it goes away. Or I'll sound like a robot, that kind of stuff. I'll get the Tin Man voice, right? But let's get into some stuff real quick. So I'm going to try and make this as bigly as possible because, well, going to be hard to read otherwise. Now, I know there are a lot of people out there on the right or on the political spectrum that are they're whoa, sorry about that. There are people out there who are really into the idea of returning to monarchism. I know the uptick of religious talk, Catholics, Orthodox, whatever else. Obviously, I'm a part of that. A lot of those folks like monarchism, and I am not a fan. So I don't think that that is what God intended for us. I think that Christ was to be your king. God was always to be your king. The Bible warns of this over and over again, and this is in the entire totality of the Bible, that we sup, Aragon? Anyways, that we were to be our own kings and built in the image of God, and that Adam gave that over to Satan and made Satan his king. And then one of the first early stories in the Bible is the tale of Nimrod, and Nimrod was a wicked king. So that goes back to traditionally the idea that Nimrod built the Tower of Babel and was himself trying to make himself as a god. If these stories aren't real, they are at least very, very poignant metaphors, right? For the reality of our lives, for the human condition. So they are, as Jordan Peterson would say, psychologically correct. We have to understand that I get that the scriptures talk about respecting the people in power, the governors and all those things, because they were put there. This is all New Testament stuff. And even when Daniel was hunted by King Saul, he would not kill him because he respected his position of authority. But giving someone their due respect is not the same thing as understanding that we were meant to be free and have no king but Christ. So I want to read to you this little thing. You're looking at it now. You could probably read most of it yourself. And I have covered this before. This is from 1 Samuel chapter 8. And this is the telling of how Israel finally got a king, where it went from a system of basically tribes and local family leadership and that stuff, and a circuit of judges that would ride around and settle disputes, into a kingdom like the rest of the world, because that is what the world always desires, is a kingdom, a strong man, a worldly power, something to replace God with. And this is why, of course, we get worship of celebrities and politicians and, whatever else. Greta Thunberg's, how dare you? We end up worshiping folks that aren't worth it. They really aren't. They aren't particularly amazing. They're not doing anything but putting themselves out there and saying, look at me and worship me. So, anyways, now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second, Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba. So this is the beginning of this, but what happens is, hold on, my mouse is being weird. What's going on here? Scroll. Oh, man. This is like boomerism in 5,000. Here we go. I just can't use dark mode, I guess. It says, now it came to pass when Samuel told, it Judges. So we go down a little bit further. Guys, bear with me. I'm just going to be super boomer with these live streams for a while till I get a hang of it, right? It said, then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Raham and said to him, look, you are old and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us kings to judge us like all the nations. So essentially Samuel's sons were not great. And it says right there, they took bribes and everything else. And then they said, we want to have kings. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king to judge us. So Samuel prayed to the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, heed the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me. That is God talking to Samuel. They have rejected God by asking for a king. We have to understand this because the Old Testament rules don't necessarily apply to anyone living in Christ, but it is the commentary on the coming of the Lord and how we need to conduct ourselves. So we have to understand the Old Testament is a commentary for what is coming forward, and the New Testament can only be reflected upon and interpreted upon through the Old Testament and Christ. My father is fond of saying, my father being a minister, my whole life is fond of saying that the New Testament looks back to Christ and the Old Testament looks forward to Christ, but Christ is always at the center. And if you get into orthodoxy, or if you just read an Orthodox Bible like I do, and you look at the little footnotes, the little things that they put in there, everything goes back to Christ for them, because that is what the faith is about. So, Samuel goes and he tells them what God told him to tell him. This will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for his own chariots and to be his horsemen, and some will run before his chariots. He will appoint captains over his thousands and captains over his 50s. Will set some to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, your olive groves, and give them to his servants. He will take 1/10 of your grain and your vintage and give it to his officers and servants. He will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men, your donkey, and put to his work. He will take a tenth of your sheep, and you will be his servant. And you will cry out in that day because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourself, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. And I think that is rather poignant what Samuel was saying there. I think that we have to understand that this is something that was written probably 4,000 years ago, 3,000 at least. And in that, hey, Shelley, no worries. Technical difficulties at the beginning because I'm a boomer extreme. I was streaming on DLive, and so we're actually just getting into the content, but I cut down the DLive because I had an echo. So we'll try it again later. So in any case, guys, why my studio is not working right. That's interesting. There it is. There it is. Sorry, guys. My YouTube studio is jacking up on me. So I bring this up because we all know this. We all know that people in power will do this to us. And one of the reasons why they do it is because you're an other, right? We have to understand the psychology of human beings. You're an other to anyone outside of the tribe. And when you start making the hierarchies of our societies, there will always be hierarchies, but when you start making them so big and you create a protected special class, which is what we do, then you get your lands taken away. You get your children taken and sent to war. You get taxed heavily. You're no longer free. And as that passage said over and over again, that you will become the servant. You will become the servant of the king. That essentially says you will be his slave. And then in verse 19, it says, nevertheless, the people refuse to obey the voice of Samuel, and they say, no, but we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. Isn't that interesting? So what is going on there in that text? Well, it says that they want to be like the rest of the world. See, I keep telling you guys that leftism is the default position. Freedom and liberty is hard to maintain. Freedom and liberty cannot be maintained when you're building up a system that wants to be like the world, because the individual, the personality, if you would, who controls this world is evil, right? And we talk about this in this passage, and it's just very, like I said, it's just so important because it informs so much. It's just a little thing. It's just a little passage, but it tells us that, one, don't be like the world. Two, don't wish for a king because God's supposed to be your king. And if you read 1 Samuel through 1st and 2nd Samuel, or 1st and 2nd Kingdoms, if I'm not mistaken, in the Orthodox Bible, and then they have 3rd and 4th, which is we have 1st and 2nd Samuel in the Western world, and then 1st and 2nd Kings or Kingdoms. So same books, just different names. In any case, we see through this that the judges became corrupt. So again, power corrupted. And then the people said, we want a king. We want to be like the world. And then Christ said, they haven't rejected you, Samuel. They have rejected me. So again, I'm bringing this up because I often hear a lot about the like NRX types. I mean, tanks kind of end that. It's one of the things that we started with when we first started the show. And he's not sold on it per se, but he's very much into the idea of monarchism, and he thinks it's biblical. And I do not. I think it's antithetical to what the Bible teaches. And I think that it's very important to understand that we have built up, again, a society that is out of touch with each other, because you are not going to care about the guy 1,000 miles away in his everyday life, right? Who cares about someone's everyday life that you don't know? They don't exist to you. That's not in your purview. You can't even see or realize how many people there are. There are 7 billion people on Earth right now, right? How many of those can you conceive of? How many people are you actually interacting with? Those people are doing their own thing, and yet we're taking out of the nearly, 325 million people in the United States that are legally here. I'd say we have a population of about 350, would be my guess, because I think a lot of people aren't in the census. But in any case, we're doing that right now with our country, with the federal government, with these people employed in the federal government who are, just part of this system. They don't know anything about you. Their jobs are made so that they can almost never get fired. We just had one of them kill somebody, a few weeks back in the Capitol insurrection, right? And they continue to take and take and take. And we wonder, when they'll ever settle down, when they'll ever stop being corrupt, when the strong man will come and correct everything. That's why people had so much faith in Trump. I didn't really ever have that much faith in Trump. But I thought he was a good kick in the pants to the establishment. And so right now, I'm trying to look up the number of federal employees because I don't know what it is, but I think I can probably find it. I mean, my wife and I were talking about this the other day. What was she talking about? She was talking about trying to find a listing of all the federal government agencies, and we couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. She was trying to look up how many federal agencies there were. And there are so many. There are so many alphabet letters agencies that it's just not really feasible. And there's stuff that you guys probably never heard of. Like, I maybe you have. But do you know what the Diplomatic Security Service is, for instance? It's just one off the top of my head. Obviously, they provide security for diplomats. But that's a federal department. Most people aren't even aware that it exists. Here we go. So let's switchy the screens again here. How many people work for the U.S. federal government? More than 2 million people on the nation's payroll. Here's the breakdown. And that was from 2019. 2 million people work in the federal government. And then that's not including the people that work for the federal government outside of the federal government and contracting. That's like everything around here. In these parts where I live, because Maryland, Nova, and this corner of West Virginia are just full with people who are federal employees or contractors for the feds. It's why the Leesburg area, which is very rural in Loudoun County, is like the most expensive place to live in the United States. These people are very, very wealthy. And you can see this. If you drive into Nova, you can see where old Nova was, and you can see new Nova where people are moved out. It's got a little bit more rural. And that's the thing. They keep pushing outward. The urban sprawl, right? And all those people are just within the system. My mother worked for AT&T corporate for, years till she retired, all of her life, basically. And was a federal contractor. And she worked with spooks to spy on people's phone calls and stuff, And that's what they did. I don't agree with that, but whatever. She thought it was fine because she, I don't think, had the same conception of the government doesn't have the right to do that. That they could use that, and that's a terrible potential misuse of power. So 2 million federal employees and then all the other people that they contract, I wonder if this is at all... Oh, the Dollhawk, you got a buddy that works at DSS. That's cool. From what I understand, they get pretty good training. In any case, what was I saying? Oh, I was saying you have all these people within the system. So out of, let's go with the number, the official number of 325 million. 2 million people dictate to those 325 million, either through bureaucracy or through election or appointment, such as a judge, right? 2 million people. Do we know what the math is on that? I'm gonna do that real quick, right? Because I know that is, right, way underrepresentative of the population. So let's see here. We're going to divide that by 325 million. .00615. Yeah. So it's 0.06%, I think, right? Yeah. A tiny slivered fraction have that power. Don't you think that that's a problem? I titled this, Dunbar's number, the problem with accountability, right? Or what did I title it? Let me bring it up here. Dunbar, scaling, and accountability. Do you think that those people are truly accountable in any way? They have all that power? A lot of those employees might be, I don't know because I didn't look at the article, might be the military, but that I don't think that's including the military. I could be wrong on that, but seems to me that being in the Marine Corps at the time I was in, there was 175,000 Marines. I think there's just under 1 million Army, so that the military would make up those numbers alone. So that's not even including the military. It's just regular federal employees. It's people that are working in, the IRS or something like that, right? It's people working in all these different alphabet groups, agencies. All of them, by the way, are unconstitutional, or the majority of them, I would say. If you look at our representation in the federal government, it was capped. It was capped eventually because they weren't going to keep building out the Capitol building, and because they knew it was just going to keep, their power. If that expanded, the number of representatives in Congress, they would have less power as individuals. And so we get this 500 some odd people that, are supposed to legislate and dictate rules. Mostly what they do, though, is they promote globalism. Again, nothing of your interest. And it brings me back to that passage from Samuel. We look at that, and every warning that was there is exactly what they do. They take from us, they don't produce anything, and then they spread the wealth, right? Or they take it for themselves. Have you ever considered or looked at the ratings of federal employees? That is the pay scales. They are quite high. So let me. Let me look at a federal government pay scale. Okay, I got a GS-based pay scale table here. So GS1, Step one, $19,000. No one's a GS1. GS14 or 15, $100,000 a year, and it continues to go up. I'm not saying that the government salaries are the most lucrative either, but we know like Dr. Fauci's making, what, $400,000 a year or something crazy, highest paid federal employee out there. These aren't necessarily, huge amounts of money, but we got to look at the over time and time in, and it goes up, and you'd be surprised what people in the federal government make. And then, of course, the other thing is the fact that it's nearly impossible to ever get fired once you're in the feds. They just don't do it, guys. They don't fire people because, it's a socialist system, literally. You don't have to quite participate. You just show up. Shelley said they are high. Yeah. Well, that was a base scale too. That doesn't really show like time and service. I know it has 10 steps and all, but those things apply. I've been on a step system before when I worked for the sheriff's department. Of course, I didn't get a pay raise for 5 years that I was supposed to get. So by the time I left, I should have been making 10 grand more a year than I was. But is what it is because in that case, the county, they decided they were going to try and be frugal, even though they had a surplus of money. This was during the 2008 market crash. And even though they had a surplus of money and everything was balanced in the county, they just decided they weren't going to pay their employees pay raises, even though they just negotiated them right before. And this stuff is pretty typical. And again, I don't really see those people. I do have my brother-in-law, his aunt was worked HR at the county for a while. She left. There was some stuff going on in there. It was crazy. And you just see it time and time again. There's always something crazy in the government going on because people tend to want to line their own pockets. And again, this goes back to this problem of scaling. Do you trust the people who are leading you? When I was in the military as an NCO, or even before that, because when I was a Lance Corporal, I had billets of NCOs. So still, when I was in the military, as an NCO, I had Marines under me. They were under my care. I needed to know them, and they trusted me. I would have guys that hated their squad leaders come to me and talk to me and be like, hey, man, da-da-da-da. And I'd be like, fine. And then one of my guys might be a friend of that guy, the other squad leader. And so I'd be like, hey, man, you want to trade? Go to the platoon sergeant and be like, hey, man, so-and-so and I, Corporal so-and-so and I, we want to trade guys in our squad. Okay, no big deal. I mean, that's the troop welfare aspect of that. But you have to know and trust who you're with. And so guys would come and follow me because they knew I was reasonable. They knew I wasn't going to yell and scream at them all the time because I'm not that guy. I don't like to yell and scream. I think it's a waste of time. I think it's a lot more effective to yell and scream when you're a nice person, like 95,000% of the time, right? Because it's not expected. When you yell and scream constantly, everyone's just like, well, that's just that guy. He just always does that. He's just a big blowhard, right? So, Shelley, I see your comment here. It says, I work for the state, so basically I'm on welfare, but work for it. Well, I don't know. I mean, not to get like all personal, but I was making nearly $50,000 a year base pay when I left the sheriff's department, and I live in a small rural, or did live in a small rural county. I made that much money though because it was comparable, given here that Maryland, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania are all very close. So it was to have competitive wages because I could have went down the road an hour and made another 10 grand a year or something like that. For me, it's not worth the drive or any of that kind of stuff. Plus, I didn't really ever want to be in corrections. I just did it because I needed a job, and I stayed in it because, well, I split from my ex-wife and I needed to take care of my daughter. So sometimes you make choices and you get stuck in them. But again, we talk about this. We talk about, the scaling issue and the accountability issue and all of this. Well, is there ever accountability? Hunter Biden, I can't even say it with a straight face. Hunter Biden was just put out there that he was going to be lecturing in colleges about fake news. And the next day, Rudy Giuliani was raided by the feds. If you don't recall, and it was over Burisma or something like that too. I thought it was campaign lobbying stuff, but I stand corrected on that. It was over Burisma stuff. And he's the same guy who broke the Hunter laptop story, right? Had a copy of that laptop. Amazingly, the FBI had that laptop for over a year and did absolutely nothing. Do you really think that there's accountability there? Remember when Crooked Hillary was going to go to jail? No, I know Donald Trump was smack talking, and it's funny, it's hilarious, but we knew that that wasn't going to happen. I mean, we can't even get the DOJ to take care of stuff like Antifa. The FBI coaxes some boog boys who are closer to the left-wingers anyways. A lot of the boog boys, if you guys don't understand this, are very lefty, and they sympathize with like BLM and stuff like that. But let me get my train of thought back there. But yeah, they tricked these guys into this kidnapping plan of Gretchen Whitmer and to break them up and arrest them. Why can we not infiltrate Antifa cells? Crowder did. Freaking Steven Crowder did. And he spoke with the FBI about it. James O'Keefe has. James O'Keefe has people in there to report on what's going on. Why cannot the FBI do this with all of the massive resources that they have? Well, they don't want to, because Antifa is a tool for them, and so is BLM. It's a tool for them to continue to gain power, much like this movement of BLM to defund the police and bring in federal police. And again, I said before, I'll say it again, I think I said it several times yesterday, since I streamed twice yesterday, that there's going to be even less accountability and far more brutality if that's the case. Do you remember during the riots when the National Guard came by and there were people on their front porch just watching them stroll through and they're shooting tear gas at them on the front porch? Do you think that guardsman got in trouble? Probably not. Probably not at all. So, how do we fix this? What can we do? Well, I always say, and most of us are saying, we need to look local. We talk about sheriffs and we talk about local government and all, but really, we need to restructure, guys. We need to go backward. Return to locality, and I mean very immediate. I think my neighborhood has 700 homes in it. Something like that. That's a lot of people. I don't know anyone outside of my block. I know the people on my block, basically. 700 homes here. Let's say on average, each home has, 3 people in it. That's, 2,100 people. It's a very small area, my neighborhood. It's not a big neighborhood. It's a lot of people. And it's probably more than that. And I don't know them. I don't necessarily, as human beings, of course, I care that they live and have good lives and all that. But I don't care about them. I don't think about them. Right? They're not part of my life. And when we are looking at how to do things better and how to escape, we cannot fall into the same pitfalls of developing our own communities, like Dawn and Pleb Ranch. Cannot fall into the same pitfalls as we have fallen into time and time again. Now, I'm not utopian, which is why I'm not an ANCAP. ANCAP is just as utopian as, the communists are. But I do think that would be the preferred system. That requires people to be very, very good people, to be moral agents. And, the world's just not. I mean, look right now. People are getting suspended, police officers, for making jokes or for saying offhanded comments. And even not even that bad of comments. The video I played last night over in the Ins Justify the Memes, there was a cop that basically some dude came up to him and was like, "Oh, you going to shoot me like you did Mackay Bryan?" And he's like, "Are you going to try and stab somebody?" Legitimate question. And then he's like, "Oh, man, that's BS, man. She called you." No, she didn't. She did not. She was having a temper tantrum. She was a foster child. She ran out of the house with a knife. And then she fell or did whatever she did, and ran up to a girl and almost shivved her. And the cop did what he needed to do. So then another cop made a TikTok video. It was a joke about calling up Kobe. Because or not Kobe, LeBron James, I'm sorry. Calling up LeBron to see if he can do anything. And he's now suspended. All right? This is the way it goes. You must comply. You must comply, or they will take everything from you. This is why we have to escape. Because most of you, hopefully some of you in my audience, have strong wills, but most of you don't. You're weak-willed. You really are. I mean, how self-disciplined are you? I say this, like, what do you do to discipline yourself on a regular basis? Now, some of you who are spiritually minded, maybe you read your scriptures and pray regularly. That's important. Do you fast? The 3 tenets of Christianity spelled out within the Sermon on the Mount are fasting, prayer, and giving. Has nothing in there about reading scripture, by the way. You should read scripture. It's for your edification. I'm just saying that those are the 3 main tenets that you must do to have the basic requirements of Christianity, right? I mean, obviously you need to be a good person. There are all these other rules. You have to have a relationship with God. But as a servant of Christ, those are the things that you need to do. You need to be in communication. That's prayer, right? You need to fast because that's self-discipline, and makes you rely on the Lord to get you through it. And you have to give. You have to help people out. So maybe you do those things, but do you work out? Do you take care of your body otherwise? Are you, I have, I'm pretty sure, a legitimate condition where I don't sleep well, but I still try to push on, right? I still try to do what I need to do. But are you being lazy? Are you missing your training sessions? Are you doing the things that are going to make your life better? Are you pushing yourself forward? Most of you aren't, because that's hard. The default is to just be. The default is just be here. Just go along to get along, right? And that's why we're at the point we're at. That's why we're here. Because for so long, we've been going along to get along. Your grandparents went along to get along, and your great-grandparents. And they allowed FDR, Woodrow Wilson before him, and Teddy Roosevelt before him, to socialize America, to erode our Constitution, to scale up even more so. And now we are the leaders of the one world government. And maybe not for too much longer. Maybe not. I see China coming around the corner. And I'd like to be wrong about that. Guys, there often I say things I really want to be wrong about. I really don't want China to be the world police. That's going to be an interesting thing. And scary. Because they don't care about... you think we're bad? And we are, as far as the government doing immoral actions, right? Waco, Ruby Ridge, bombing kids in Syria, that kind of stuff. And I'm pretty sure that China has even lesser scruples And they have way more control, way more censorship. But anyways, I don't know, guys. How long have I been going now? 45 minutes. So, if we think about the population over history, we know that it has scaled up over time, right? We live amongst all these people, these, billions of people. Throughout most of history, aside from the technology, the control that we have with technology, throughout most of history, you weren't going to be affected too much by anyone on the highest levels. So let's use the president as an example. And let's make that a comparison to a king, right? Do you think you were ever going to see the king? Probably not. Not unless you were a lord, you had some wealth, and you had some reason to go petition him. Maybe you'd see him walk through your village or your lands or something. But most likely you're going to see his servants. You're going to see his emissaries come to you and do whatever. And just like Samuel said, take your stuff. Because that's what happens. You're going to not have much interaction with him. And unless the sheriff or one of the lords of the area, the feudal system back in the day, right, had some sort of beef with you, you probably weren't going to deal with them either. And it's still like that here in most of the United States, actually. I mean, sure, I drive around, I see the sheriff's department on occasion. The other day I was saying I went and grabbed a six-pack, and sure enough, lady cop coming in as I'm walking out. Sorry, guys, I'm going to look up here. It's the world population real quick. Or, sorry, population growth over history. See if I can find a good chart. But generally, I don't see them. Now, a while ago, last year, when my alternator went out on my car, fortunately, I had a sheriff's deputy stop by and help me push the car off the road. But that guy I actually knew. Not well, but I did know him because I used to do security at the hospital, and his girlfriend worked at the front desk, and he come in several times. So small world sometimes, right? But still, I'm not seeing those guys too often. They're not coming to my house. They're not interfering with my life. The county government here, I don't really have to deal with them. In fact, the most I have to deal with as far as government goes is my freaking HOA, which is it's not fun. I'll never do this HOA thing again, I'll tell you that. It could be worse. It could certainly be worse. But, we see this in rural life all the time. Now, if I go down to Baltimore, depending on what part of Baltimore I'm at, I'm going to see a cop every block. And if I go down to D.C., especially the inner sanctum of D.C., well, now we have, National Guard troops there. But, you're going to see police on nearly every block. They're all over the place. But most people are walking around peacefully and minding their own business. So, we can escape. We can get away and free from these people who claim to have power over us. I'm not saying anything new here, right, guys? I mean, most of you are right there with me. And I really do want to build a network of friends and groups across the United States. And like I said before, we can kind of have our own underground railroad or whatever you want to call it, where if we need to travel, we have safe havens to go. Because the reality is that this direction we are pushing in from our federal government is it's untenable to any sort of freedom. It's untenable to any sort of strong society. When you have the President of the United States pushing the same nonsensical talking points in a speech to nobody, by the way, that was highly downvoted all over the place on YouTube, by the way. When you have him doing that and he's saying the same talking points as the extreme leftists in the streets and talking about racial justice and talking about George Floyd and Derek Chauvin, pushing these narratives, you have a problem. Because people see the king, that is President Biden, as a god. Now, most of us are more reasonable than that, and we're not going to do that. But, you know, man, it drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. Let me see if I can get this. The world war meter has a good, yeah. Hold on, let me go backward. All right. So all the way down here, this is the world population. Let me bigly this. Yeah, got it. So, okay, we're almost at 8 million, or 8 billion, excuse me. That's ridiculous. And we're trying to make a one world government with 8 billion people. I mean, we have to balkanize. This is the crazy thing of the leftists. This is why they have to, the collectivist mentality, making everyone a monolith. Excuse me. Destroying your identity. Right? Unpersoning you and atomizing everything. This is what they do because it demoralizes and it makes people who have just been coasting be like, man, there's no point in going on. I remember many times I've had conversations with folks and they're like, man, but they control the banks. They do this. They control that. They control everything. There's no hope. And I'm like, well, man, you might as well just, hang it up then or something. I don't want to tell you. Not encouraging that at all, folks. Again, like, man, I'm black-pilled, but not like that. There's a lot of hope. Maybe I'm clear-pilled. I don't know what pill I am. So here we go back to the 1950s. Even in the 1950s, 2 billion people on Earth. Let's see. So in 1850 or 1804, 1 billion, the first 1 billion people. And again, in 1760, relevant, given that our nation was founded not long after that, we were less than 1 billion people, and so forth. And of course, plagues and all kinds of stuff have been one of the things to suss that out. We're sitting here worried about the novel coronavirus with a 99.7% survival rate. And at the same time, the, yahoos on the interwebs. Yes, Dollhawk, I have an HOA. I know. I was a renter most of my life until 7 years ago. And I decided to buy a home. And I should have bought a home in another neighborhood with a cheaper HOA that had a bigger house, and it was a foreclosure, so I didn't want to. I like this neighborhood for reasons. It's a convenient location. We got walking trails. It's a nice neighborhood. In retrospect, I should have bought a house out in the middle of the woods. So, in any case, let's see. Where was I at? Where was my thought at? I was talking about that, the people on Earth and the scaling up and the scaling down. We have, 325 million people in the United States. I'm going to look up the population in the U.S. Let's see. Population throughout history. From Thought Company. Okay. Well, this website doesn't want to work well with that, but okay. Hopefully you guys can see that well. So U.S. Census figures. Here you will find a list of U.S. population every 10 years from the first official census in 1790 to the most recent in 2010. That's not the most recent. We just did a census, so this is a little old, but good enough, good enough. Including a recent population estimate. The population is expected to hit 355 million by 2030, 373 million by 2040, and 388 million by 2050. And it'll probably be more than that because we just keep letting people cross the border illegally. So it's not just going to be birth. And supposedly there's a birth rate replacement issue. I don't think that there is. I think it's not as big a deal. And frankly, folks, I don't want a lot of people breeding. I'm sorry. I don't want to be a snob here, but these folks out there who are pushing all these left-wing agendas, don't encourage them to breed, please. Let their ideas die out with them. The numbers from before 1790 are the only estimates and come from the colonial pre-federal statistics. This document makes a point of counting the white and black populations, both separately and jointly. Ooh, look at you. Also, up until 1860, census numbers did not include Native Americans. Well, why would they? They weren't citizens of the United States. They're considered their own nations. Anyways. So from 1610, 350 people. Do you think that 350 people in 1610, in whatever configuration, could suss out their leadership, their hierarchy, could have accountability? I think so. 1620, 2,000 people. Well, pretty sure the same thing. Now here, by 1670, we have over 100,000 people. But again, that wasn't all isolated in a singular area. But this is important to understand that slow growth initially, and then everything explodes, right? And this is what happens. And so in a way, like I said, let's think about this. Let this be a lesson. We are all talking about moving out into the woods, building communities, doing something different, getting away from the cities, getting away from the influence of the big, bad, big brother, the federal government, and their craziness. But then we cannot make the same mistakes. We cannot say, well, let's create a structure and a hierarchy where we literally just do the same thing. We just keep populating and we still have one leader or one council of 10 people or whatever it is, and we never know them. No, we have to decide that there is a number and a cap, and after that, we have to break off, and there has to be a separate community. The end. With borders, treaties, whatever else, but respecting the other folks' property rights, right? Respecting their willingness to live the way they wish to live. And we can only do this if we keep people focused on, in my belief at least, on something strong that keeps them grounded. And I would say that should be faith in that Christ is our King. And in understanding that, which is in part why I opened up with this, and 1 Samuel chapter 8, is that we want people to understand that there is no one who is their master except for themselves. And our governments must be based in that. And any idea outside of that needs to be rejected. And you can be excommunicated from the community, as far as I'm concerned. You can be exiled. Exile is a really, really good thing, actually, for various reasons. the commies used to exile people, and that was for those people's benefit, because if they didn't get exiled, they would have been executed or gulagged, like Solzhenitsyn. Milan Kundera was exiled from Czechoslovakia. I've read his works, or excerpts of his works, many times to you. And Yevgeny Zamantyan, I mentioned yesterday, who wrote the book We, which I encourage everyone to go read. It's not a long read, guys. It's like 100 pages. It's literally, the chapters are like, I don't know, 5-6 pages each. It's broken up in a very easy way, because it's written like this guy's daily journal entries. And so you can look at it and you can read, 20 minutes a day and probably get through the book in a week. So again, we see all this scaling up when we are back here in, let's go up here to the beginning of the century when things got really crap. We have 76 million, and now we have, 325 million, because this isn't up to date. That's a huge difference. Our representation hasn't changed. The number of people hasn't really changed in the Congress or Senate. The bureaucracy has gotten bigger. And once again, as I told you before, we had a yeah. I'm sorry, guys. I was just reading the chat there. See, Dollhawk was saying that, number one stipulation was no HOA. Yeah, it's kind of, I got a pool in my neighborhood and stuff, so someone's got to manage that. But I get you. I feel you, brother. I'll never live in suburbia again, though. So I will own this house probably my entire life, as long as the leftists don't strip it from me, because, well, that's quite possible. I'll be a landlord, I actually would like to make this my house isn't that big, but it would be a good Airbnb of sorts. So I kind of want to beautify it, landscape the backyard, do a lot of stuff that I don't have money for at the moment, but I'll get there eventually. But I was talking about the scaling again. Like, why have we had like a quadrupling of our population, right? And yeah, the federal government has gotten bigger with that, so you could say, well, maybe that's scaled properly, but it's all bureaucracy. Why, with that, have we not brought up our representation? Why haven't we started regional governments? I thought about it, to have another layer of protection. Let regions, argue amongst each other. We already have regional areas that are very similar in thought, like New England. California has a section of it on the coastline, basically, that's very leftist. The rest of it's very red. Same with, Oregon and Washington. But when you start looking at maps, what you start to see is that actually most of the United States is red. Most of the United States are a bunch of right-wing folk. They all live in the countryside, in the flyover states, as they say. Why is that not being represented? Because the people in the cities are psychopaths, and they always want power. That's why people move to cities. It's one thing if you're born there, right, and grow up there. But people move to cities to escape their lives in their little small towns. And then they're going to go explore the big world with all the culture and da-da-da-da-da. And most people aren't that cultured. I was in New York when my wife had her initial interview. I mean, they hired her already, basically. But it was like her interview orientation with Project Veritas. And I drove up there. It was kind of a long drive, and once we got in, I told my wife, I said, I'm not going to be able to get to sleep. I said, can we go down to the bar and get a beer or two to kind of relax? Because there's a lot of traffic, And we start talking to the bartender, and she was talking about how her husband was a retired school teacher and all this stuff. And, she's got a typical old school kind of like New York Fran Drescher type accent thing going on. And this guy comes up and he's Australian or New Zealand, New Zealander or Australian, I don't know. But he had like that kind of accent. I don't know if he was a Kiwi or an Aussie. It was hard to tell. I can sometimes tell a difference, but he just said, "Excuse me, where's the toilet?" And this woman's face went, she's like, "Toilet? Toilet?" And I said, I think I told the guy, I was like, "The bathroom's like right there." And she goes, "Oh, the bathroom." And she goes, "Who says toilet?" And I'm like, what? And I'm thinking this is a like 50, 60-year-old woman. I forget how old she was, but she was older. And this is amazing to her. And she works in a hotel bar. In the Merrimack area in New York. It's like, a very Westchester area, which is very posh. And she's like, I told her, and she goes, "Oh, the bathroom." And she goes, he had some kind of accent or something, and I couldn't understand him. And I said, "Yeah, he sounded like he was maybe Australian." And she goes, "Oh, European." She's Australian. That's not European. But this is the cultural center of the world, right? The New York City. You go to LA, right? The cultural centers of the world. LA, with all of its homeless people living in their feces and heroin needles all over the place. With a bunch of satanic pedophiles making movies. Man. So, yeah, I think, back to my point, I think I'm bringing this up, not because we don't all know this, because I kind of want to suss this out in my mind, and so this makes me do that, right? But I'm bringing this up most importantly because, like I said, once again, if we don't learn, we will fall into the same traps. No matter what we create, no matter what we set up for our children and our grandchildren, it will not be protected if our progeny do not understand the things that happened, the things that are happening today, the things that have happened through history, and the proper perspective. And so I'm not like super well versed with all the like NRX folks. I get most of their basic arguments. Like I said, Tank kind of comes from that sphere, and so I have some understanding of it, but I don't understand this call to monarchy as if it's going to be any different. In fact, it will be exactly the same, if not worse, and it'll be Game of Thrones, guys. Game of Thrones is based on real things in real life in medieval Europe, where people basically murdered each other to gain power. Because the game of power is always evil. You shouldn't be wishing to be a leader or have power. Now, you might become one. You might get some. But then you should give it over. I think that one of the reasons why George Washington, to my mind, was maybe one of the better presidents we had, I'm not saying he was great or anything like that, was because he gave over his power. He was a reluctant leader as far as the president goes. And then he wrote an excellent letter about, what would destroy the United States. In fact, let's bring that up. Let's read that right now because it is ultra relevant. Sorry. I am full of misspeaks today, folks. Let me run this through Opera because it's a lot easier on my eyes when I can properly use dark mode. So I don't know if I'll be able to read this whole thing, but hey, I'll stay on here for a bit. But anyways, guys, as I'm trying to pull this up, we we really need to understand that we can't outsource our um, we can't outsource our children to other people to teach them and learn and stuff as well. This is part of this. See, all of this destruction is a long, long line of things that have happened for, the last 100 years. The population growth and expanse is less relative than the need for the states to divide themselves up more, the federal government to expand its representation for us, or maybe even to develop some sort of regional governments. So again, there is another layer of protection, but we're not doing that. Nope. What we're seeing now, we're sort of seeing the states stand up for themselves a little bit right now, but primarily what we're seeing is, this will work. This will work. Anyways, let me move the chat real quick. Now you guys know why Tank pushes the buttons. So, and also, want that up. So, what we see is the influence of outsiders dictating to our children their moralities instead of you taking personal responsibility of that. And this is part of why we've lost our society, because we decide to outsource everything. And again, it goes back to the scaling issue. How many of you talk to your kids' teachers? Now, with the COOF, that might be a little bit more difficult. How many of you go to PTA meetings? I don't. No, I talk to my kid's teacher when they act up and do something stupid, and I've done it several times and fixed the problem every time. Like the leftist lesbian English teacher that didn't teach any real literature and was basically telling my daughter she was a racist and a bunch of other stupid stuff. We had words. I was polite and wasn't as bad over time, I guess, but that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. We are doing this. We're letting strangers teach our kids. And you might go to the PTA meetings and all that stuff, but do you really have any influence? Do you really have any control? Because these things are started from the top at the county level and the state, because the state funds them. The other year in West Virginia, we had teachers standing on the side of the road protesting because they wanted a pay raise. West Virginia was not at all one of the lowest paying states for teachers. And the stuff that teachers do, as far as educating our children, generally isn't the best. Not anymore. I like Norm Macdonald. He's got a great joke about this. He's like, how smart do you have to be to teach a 5-year-old, a first grader? You don't have to be that smart. You just have to know more than he does. You just have to have passed the second grade, or passed the first grade. And there's a great clip of him, like, just tearing apart this woman, this Karen in the crowd. I'm a teacher. Teachers are important. No. Your ego is important to you, obviously. Your self-inflated sense of importance is not reality. I had a conversation with a lady once online. It was on like an Instagram post or something. She was responding to comments I made. And she was talking about being a teacher, and she wanted these things in the world, and da-da-da, and she wouldn't procreate because she didn't think that was the right thing to do. And I said, well, that's fine. You're just weak. You're just a weak person, and I don't want weak people to procreate, so I'm good with that. She was quite offended. And understandably. Um, but she kind of came back out. But no, I should, the way the world is, I influence, and I was telling her, you're not only weak, but your life has no purpose now, no meaning, because you have no progeny. You exist in this moment, and then it's gone. And obviously, a woman like that, I don't think had any faith or anything. So, but her argument to me was, well, no, I'm a teacher and I influence children. And I just laughed. It's like, you don't influence anybody. Now, we all have a teacher out there, right, that we found influential to some degree or another. I never in a million years, even though I like certain teachers, I really like my Latin teacher and I really like my German teacher. Probably two of my favorite teachers. And I usually liked my history teachers, depending on their personality, because I always liked history or social studies. When someone tells me that, they're like, I influence children. I'm like, how many teachers do you children have through their lives? Like, okay, through grade school, primary school, elementary, whatever you want to call it. You're going to have one person. So they might be a little bit more influential. I don't really remember my elementary school teachers, except for my fourth grade teacher, because he's the guy that helped me understand that I was dyslexic and realize that I could read. I wasn't stupid. I just, which my teachers prior to that didn't quite figure out. But again, it wasn't that influential. The guy was an atheist. I remember it back then. Because as a kid, before I fell away from the faith in my 20s, as a kid, I believed in God and all that stuff. And, Mr. Ling was an atheist. I still liked him. He was a nice teacher. He's a good guy. I don't remember my fifth grade teacher. I had all these teachers over the years. I had some influential teachers for some reason or another. I might remember some of their names. They didn't make that big of an impression on me, guys. I liked Herr Gatos, Mr. Gatos, from my German class, because he was a smart guy. He's an interesting guy. Guy hiked the Appalachian Trail. The guy went backpacking and biking in Europe and spoke Spanish, wound up in Germany, and stayed there for like 3 years and learned German. He was a cool guy. He's kind of a hippie. He's a little granola, but he was nice. And, he had a kid. And I would drive my friends home from school, and he would be walking with his son often, or my friends lived near him, because he lived around the corner from the school. And, it's good when you have a teacher that you kind of connect with, but he wasn't that influential. I never changed my life, my beliefs, my feelings because something Herr Gatos said. It just didn't happen. And anyways, I've gone off this whole diatribe on this, but but yeah, here we go. So let's read this for a little bit. So Washington's farewell address. This is really important because we should heed his words. And I'm probably going to skip through a lot of it because it's a bit lengthy. But we'll do our best to get to it. It says, the period for a new election of citizens to administer the executive government of the United States being not far distant, and in the time actually arrived when your thoughts must be employed in designating the person who is to be clothed with that important trust, it appears to me proper, especially as it may conduce to a more distinct expression of the public voice, that I should now apprise you of the resolution I have formed, to decline being considered among the number of those out of whom a choice is to be made. I always find it amazing when I read the writings of the Founding Fathers and how poised and eloquent their writings were. Because we read slop most of the time, guys. We read really, really just poor English, just overly simple. These guys were highly intelligent. It says, I beg you at the same time to do me justice and to be assured that the resolution has not been taken without a strict regard for all considerations appertaining to the relation which binds a dutiful citizen to his country. and that in withdrawing the tender of service, which silence in my situation might imply, I am influenced by no diminution of zeal for your future interest, no deficiency of grateful respect for your past kindness, but I am surprised by a full conviction, I am supported by a full conviction that the step is compatible with both. And essentially, he's laying out, I'm going to give you some instruction here because we have to worry about these things coming ahead. The acceptance of and continuous hereto in the office to which your suffrage have twice called me have been a uniform sacrifice of inclination to my opinion of duty and to a difference for what appeared to be your desire. I constantly hope that you would have been much earlier in my power, consistently with motives which I was not at liberty to discard, to return to the retirement from which I had been reluctantly drawn. The strength of my inclination to do this, previous to the last election, had even led to the preparation of an address to declare it to you. But mature reflection on the then perplexed and critical posture of our affairs with foreign nations and the unanimous advice of persons entitled to my confidence impelled me to abandon the idea. I rejoice that the state of your concerns, external as well as internal, no longer rendered the pursuit of inclination incompatible with the sentiment of duty or propriety, and I'm persuaded whatever partiality, I'm going to be super dyslexic today, may be retained for my services, that in the present circumstances of our country, you will not disapprove my determination to retire. And so the starting of this is, hey guys, I thought about retiring before. I've done my duty. I reluctantly did my duty. And I'm trying to tell you, this is an important thing, that I do not become your king. That's really what he's getting down to here. That is the rub of it. The impressions with which I first undertook this arduous trust were explained on the proper occasion. In the discharge of this trust, I will not say that I have, with good intentions, contributed towards the organization and administration of the government. The best, the best exertions of which I very fallible judgment was capable. Not conscious in the outset of the infirmity of my qualifications, experience in my own eyes, perhaps still more in the eyes of others, has strengthened the motives to different defendants of myself, and every day the increasing weight of years admonishes me and more that the shade of retirement is as necessary to me as it will be welcome. Satisfied that if any circumstances given, I'm going to scroll down here a little bit because he's going to get into right here, the unity of the government. The unity of the government, which constitutes you, one people, is also now dear to you. We're not one people anymore now, are we? Why? Because we're a bunch of factions, and one faction has control, and that faction cares about bringing you, willingly or unwillingly, kicking and screaming, into a world government. They want to bring you into a system that you don't necessarily want. It is justly so, for it is a main pillar in the edifice of your real independence. The support of your tranquility at home, your peace abroad, of your safety, of your prosperity, of that very liberty which you so highly prize. But as it is easy to foresee that, from different causes and from different quarters, much pains will be taken. Many Guys, I'm just gonna do it. Employed with to weaken in your minds the conviction of this truth, as this is the point in your political fortress against which the batteries of internal and external enemies will be most constantly and actively, through often covertly and insidiously. It's absolutely covertly and insidious, directed, is of this infinite moment that you should properly estimate the immense value of your national union to your collective and individual happiness. Important. George Washington understood the difference there that people don't understand today. There is a collective and there is an individual. The left is all about the collective, of course, because they are the Borg. They are the hive mind. They are the NPCs. They must monolith everyone because it's get on board with the future, the progress. We're going to bring humanity to this amazing point. And all they do is actually tear everything down. They make things worse. This is evidence time and again since the left-right distinction has appeared in our vernacular, right? And from the French Revolution. Do you think that Mao's revolution was not destructive? You know that China had, I forget how many hundreds or thousands of rivers absolutely destroyed because of communism? And I say that because you environmentalists are mostly commies. You're not realistic in any way, shape, or form. And you don't understand that that's what happens. Communism creates environmental destruction on a scale that is unbelievable. Compared to free markets, laissez-faire capitalism, when folks get wealthy, you know what? They get more leisure. And as they get more wealth, more leisure, they start going, you know what? I don't like living in a bunch of trash and a bunch of filth. I don't like living in an unclean environment. I was talking about landscaping my backyard. I'm going to put in like a fence and do like a Japanese garden thing because I'm kind of into that stuff. The whole point of that is to make it pristine and beautiful and to take in nature and the scenery, right? The left doesn't do this. As much as they talk about the environment, look at their art. Look at the postmodernist art and how ugly it is. It's bad. What is it? Was it Barack Obama's presidential library? Have you seen that? It's a monstrosity of gross communistic evilness. Look at all the project buildings that were built by the government. Look at all of the buildings that have been built in the Eastern Bloc back in the day. They're horrible. It's all huge industrialization. That's all they can think about because it's all materialism. And regardless of their environmental cause, which is nothing more than, to bring about a one world government because aliens haven't showed up yet. I mean, it really is. It's just to unify us. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the things that were spelled out in the 1990s under Agenda 21 by the UN, the environmental standards that they wanted are basically within code in almost every county, city, state in America. If you're going to build a house, you have to follow these guidelines if you're going to build this place legally. Why is some body of globalists dictating how I get to build my house? I don't know, but I digress because I'm going to read more of this. It is of, infinite moment that you should properly estimate the immense value of your national union and your collective and individual happiness. Again, he understands that both exist at the same time. And guys, when there is a problem or when there is an imbalance in this, much like when there is an imbalance between the masculine and the feminine, we're going to have a bad time. And right now, this is what we have. We have ultra collectivism going on, and we have an ultra-gynocentric society. And of course, there's all that globalist stuff too. So let's see here. That you should cherish a cordial, habitual, and immovable attachment to it, accustoming yourselves to think and speak of it as a palladium of your political safety and prosperity, which for is the preservation of jealous anxiety, discountenance, whatever may suggest even a suspicion that it can in any event be abandoned, and indignantly frowned upon the first drawing of every attempt to alienate any portion of our country from rest, or to ineffable and sacred ties which now link the various parts. So, let's just highlight this real quick. He says that you should cherish this, that you are part of this union and that you are active in it. Do any of you feel like you are part of your government, that you're active in it? Do you feel like your vote counted? Do you feel like that anything that you do, petitioning the government, writing letters, calling your congressman, whatever it is, do you feel that that has any sort of impact? Are you really a part of the government? Or are you now a separate entity and a second-class citizen? I can tell you right now, black, white, whatever your skin tone is, if you have the wrong politics, you're in the outgroup and you are the enemy to those folks. I don't do it often anymore, but I read the stuff that leftists say. They're all a bunch of retards. They really are. They're idiots. And they think that you wanting people to be free and having free markets and not wanting authoritarianism is evil. That's just mind-blowing. It is absolutely mind-blowing that someone would say, oh yeah, basically, getting married and having children, teaching good moral values, not assaulting people, trying to help others out, and wanting people to be prosperous and, not have the government take all their things is evil. That's evil. Okay. Yeah. The Bible told me that was going to happen. Pretty sure I read that several times in the Bible that men would say what was good would be called bad. But, the wisdom of the Lord is with the Lord. It's not with this world. This world, the wisdom is of Satan. He just wants to tear it all down. And he is their God. Truly. And again, if all of that is just metaphor, if it's just telling of the psychology of human beings, if God did not exist, I don't believe that. But let's just say that's true. That worldview, that perspective still explains how the world works, doesn't it? We are going toward the propensity of evil. Now, some people would say, well, I think people are naturally good. Some people say, oh, well, I think people are naturally bad. We have the capability of both, and we have to choose. But unless we are with God, unless we are in Christ, on the vine of Christ, as he says in John 15, unless we are friends of Jesus, there is no greater gift to a friend than a man to lay down his life, right? Unless we have that focus, we're in the spell of Satan. And I know there are a lot of good people who aren't religious. I know there are a lot of good people who aren't really in the faith. But it's really, really difficult to maintain yourself, stay strong, without some sort of centralized philosophical grounding. For me, that is Christ, the Logos, the Word. It's part of why I do this, because I'm compelled to. And my words are a reflection of that Logos, that purpose. I'm speaking and creating so that people can live better lives. So maybe they'll understand some things. And, you guys don't have to agree with me on everything. I'm just kind of here rambling because I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of things to say. Shelly, it's fine if you have to leave. I'm just going to stream. It doesn't matter if I got 2 viewers right now. It doesn't matter. This will get the reviews. Again, I'm not the best at this. Hopefully tomorrow I will have the D Live working again. I probably didn't need to take it down. I think I just needed to replug in my mic, but we'll see. I'll have to experiment with it, guys. So tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern, I will probably do another stream. But yeah. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. But I was talking about the logos and how important that is, and speaking the truth, because the logos and the truth is the logos, right? But the truth is my highest value. And a lot of people will say, well, Bill, doesn't the Bible tell you to love? Yeah, it does, absolutely. In fact, Paul says without love, none of these other things, that is the gifts of the Holy Spirit, are matter. If you don't have at least the gift of love, well, I have a lot of love, but there is no love without truth. Truth must come first. And I'll explain that to you in brief. It's something like this. A lot of people say they love folks, right? A lot of people feel like they're in love. But what they actually are, they're in lust, they're in passion. And I don't mean just as for individuals. I mean, this could be material things. It could be anything, right? But you have a lust or a passion for something. Maybe you have baseball cards, right? For a short time when I was a kid, baseball cards were cool. I used to collect them. I was like 8 or 9. So maybe you have a huge passion for baseball cards or comic books, whatever it is. Is that a just passion? Is that something that is just something, you're following your emotions, or is that a just passion? And that's something simple. I'm talking about material things, but when it comes to people, what do we find when people love things, love people, supposedly? I don't think they're using the proper word there. Well, they often want to control them, don't they? They often don't want to ever let them go, right? They don't want them to have free will. Is that love? I don't think so. Free will can only exist because of love. And I've told my wife this before, not to get like overly personal here, but I kind of, mix the two, just talking and ideas with some of my personal life, because my channel is me. I'm a kind of open book kind of guy. But, when my wife and I have gotten in fights in the past or whatever, because those things happen, right? No matter what, I always tell her, I'm always going to be here. I said, no matter what you do, I'm always here, and you're it. And if you walked away from me, then I'll be celibate the rest of my life. That is a commitment to what is true to me, and that is a love of freedom. This truth has to come first, because what's true to me is that God put her in my life, and I know He did because I prayed for it, and my family prayed for it, and at a moment of weakness and me breaking down and praying to God and then having relief of this grand desire to meet this woman, 3 days later, I'm on a date with her, and she's my girlfriend that night. And 4 months later, we're married. And 3 years later, we're having a baby girl. But that's because I trusted in God, because I've been seeking and pursuing the truth. And anyone who was seeking the truth honestly will find it. And they'll find love isn't what you thought it was. Love is not about control. It's not about passion. It's not about having a lust for something. It's much deeper. It's about a true commitment no matter what. And for me, I'm not really explaining my point because it is whatever. But for me, the truth is in Christ, and He says He made one man for one woman. Now you could say, but Bill, You used to be a man whore and you were married before. Aha, that is true. I was. Oh, I wasn't in Christ then either. My ex-wife was into, the occult and Wiccan stuff, and when I met her, and we did end up going to church and all, but I wasn't living a godly life. I didn't have a relationship with God. But again, that love comes with truth, because see, people say that they love themselves and they don't, or love their children and whatever else, but they're not willing to tell them the truth. Like, if you love your children, you should tell them the truth. You shouldn't hide things. Right? I think it's the worst thing that we do. Worst thing that we do as parents is hide our sins from our children. And you could think, well, but Bill, they'll say, well, I'm a hypocrite. Maybe when they're a teen. Or you can explain to them, I used to do this, not anymore. And I don't want you to go through that. See, that's love and truth. A lot of people go, I've known people like this. I can never spank my kid. I can never discipline my kid, whatever it is, because it will bring them too much pain. I don't want them to hate me. There's no truth in that. It's void. It's empty. It doesn't reflect reality. The reality is you're just going to graze a bunch of ingrates, and you do. You do. And I've seen it time and again. I actually have, she's passed away now, but I have an aunt that, I have cousins that were never disciplined, and they've all been in jail multiple times. One of them passed away of a drug overdose a few years ago. Pretty sure that's how my aunt died as well. And that's because, I love them so much. No. You love yourself. See, again, no truth there, right? You love yourself, and you love the feeling you get when your children think that you're the best in the world because you give them everything they want. That's not love, folks. Love exudes from you. Like I said, I have no plans to ever marry again. And if something were to happen to my wife, then that's a different case. But if for some reason she were to leave me, I will remain because I love her and because of my duty to Christ. But in any case, let's read some more of this farewell address, and I'll get out of here, guys, at around the 2-hour mark. Again, it's just a kind of rambly stream once again. I guess maybe it comes off better when I go to rewatch it, because when you're doing this stuff live, y'all, if you don't know, any little pause in the action feels like forever. You're very self-aware in the moment. And you think you say stupid things or you misspeak or whatever, and then you go rewatch it, which I don't do with everything I make, but I do rewatch my stuff just to see how I'm doing, to learn. When you go to rewatch it, you realize, man, it wasn't as bad as I thought. I thought yesterday was way more rough than it seemed to be. Now, I didn't watch the whole thing yet from yesterday. I think did I watch an hour of it? I can't even recall. Because I turned it on right before I went to bed, and I think I was I'm too tired to watch this. But yeah, the many topics I could speak on, right? Many topics I could speak on, but the main focus of this is in the first hour or so, and that is the scaling problem and not falling into the pitfalls of the past and the things that we need to do once we get ourselves set up. Once we get our community set up, we have to understand the rules of of humanity, of the world, right? We have to understand that we can't allow our children to fall into these things. For this, you have every inducement of sympathy and interest. Citizens, by birth or choice or of common country, that country has a right to concentrate your affections. The name of American, which belongs to you in your national capacity, must always exalt the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discriminations. Now, what does that mean? And then the name of America must belong to you in your national capacity. You must always exalt the just pride of patriotism more than any appellation derived from local discriminations. What he's saying is that no matter what, we're all Americans, and we can't just divide ourselves. We can't just balkanize, even though we are in our own local affairs. With slight shades of difference, you have the same religion, manners, habits, and political principles. You, in a common cause, fought the triumph together. The independence and liberty you possess are the works of joint counsel and joint efforts of common dangers, suffering, and successes. This is all true. And do we have this today? No. No, we do not. We have a false dichotomy within the government to trick stupid people that aren't paying attention at least, or people who think that they're paying attention because they're too arrogant to know that they don't know what's actually going on behind the scenes. But, we really, really have to understand that America was never homogenous, right? But it was close enough. And now we're so torn apart that ideologically, spiritually, that we need to balkanize. It must happen. And if it doesn't happen, what will happen? It will be great suffering and tragedy, like in China during the Great Famine, like in Russia during the Holodomor. There will be purges, folks. Things will happen. Again, I mentioned it early in the stream. Hunter Biden, he's going to be lecturing at colleges about how to recognize fake news. And the day after, Giuliani was raided by the feds over Hunter Biden stuff, more or less, Burisma stuff, and corruption and whatever else. Giuliani. It doesn't get any more high profile than that in the government, guys, right? Everybody knows who Rudy Giuliani is, whether you love him or hate him. That is a high profile individual. We saw the same thing out of Obama. And you need to understand this. Biden's presidency is not Biden's presidency. Obama's presidency was not Obama's presidency. George Bush's presidency was not George Bush's presidency. And Clinton's presidency was not Clinton's. And neither was H.W. So their presidencies are controlled by things like the CFR. I talk about this all the time, right? Outside influences. Not from American inside influences. And I mean, some of those, like CFR, David Rockefeller is American, but are we, we're not focusing on Americans with a Council of Foreign Relations meant to bring about a one world government. But these considerations, however powerful they address themselves to your sensibility, are greatly outweighed by those which apply more immediately to your interest. Here, every portion of our country finds the most commanding motives for carefully guarding and preserving the union of the whole. Of course, that failed. And it failed right here. This letter is so important, folks. It is so important. You need to go read this yourself. I remember taking American History 101, college level history back in the day, and had to write on this. And it was the first time I was really exposed to it. I'd heard about it, I think, before and read some excerpts, but we had to study it and write, I don't know, 5-page essay or something on it, I recall. And I was like, man. I was like, Washington, he's like tearing it up. You don't realize I was like, I don't know, my 20s. I can't even recall how long ago that was. Or no. Might have been older, so maybe I did read it before. But it had been a while, I think is what it was. And I was like, dude, he's just predicted so many things. So here we have the North in an unrestrained intercourse with the South, protected by the equal laws of a common government, finds in the production of the latter greater additional resources of maritime and commercial expenses and precious materials of manufacturing industry. The South in the same intercourse benefiting by the agency of the North, seeing its agriculture grow and its commerce expand. So this was one of the primary things that helped drive the Civil War, was this economic competition between the North and the South. And the government was largely run by people in the North, which kept doing things. There was a buildup of about 50 years until the Civil War, the American Civil War, the first American Civil War, because we're in part 2 now, happened. So as that happened, the South had less tariffs for goods coming in than the North did, and they didn't like that, so they were constantly doing things and screwing with them. At the same time, obviously needing to get rid of the slavery thing because they didn't know how to deal with it. They really didn't. They were worried if they freed the slaves that they would revolt and murder them all, more or less, which, I mean, fair enough, right? And slave revolts had happened many a times in other places. But the North always was trying to put control upon the South, and in various ways for 50 years until they finally came to a breaking point. And George Washington could see how this could split up the nation immediately, which is why he's addressing it. The East, in a like intercourse with the West, already finds, and in the progress improvement of interior communications by land and water, will more and more find a valuable vent for the commodities which it brings from abroad or manufactured at home. The West derives from the East supplies requisites to its growth and comfort. And what is perhaps of still greater consequence, it must of necessity owe the secure enjoyment of indispensable outlets for its own production to the weight, influence, and the future maritime strength of the Atlantic side of the Union, directed by the indisposable community of interest as one nation. Any other tenure by which the West can hold this essential advantage, whether derived from its own separate strength or from an apostate and unnatural connection with any foreign power, must be intrinsically precarious. So don't basically saying like we can't let the West have outside influence. And the West, guys, was literally the borderlands of West Virginia and like Maryland, or at least I believe Ohio was being not a state, but was being, settled. We're talking about the western boundaries of our original 13 nations. And how much bigger are we now? The problem, like I said, goes back to scaling because of conflicting interest for different people at different times. It goes back to accountability, whether we have enough accountability or not. It goes back to the ability to be a part of this government, be a part of our manifest destiny, if you would, right? We're not a part of it anymore. We're not a part of the government. We are literally othered. There are people right now sitting in jail because they walked through the Capitol building. They did nothing but walk through an open door that police officers said, hey, come on in, come on in. We are not one people. We are too large. Too large. Guys, I've been going for about 2 hours. I'm going to cut it off here. I'll come back to this, actually. Let's get into George Washington's address tomorrow. I'll focus on it more specifically. I've talked about it before here on All Minus One, but it's been a while. So I'd like to just do a whole stream. We can talk through it, talk about some ideas that come to mind. Today, I just want to talk about the scaling and, I have too many things in my brain And I have to talk to people. And my wife doesn't want to hear it most of the time. The wifey does not want to hear it at all, which is okay. You know, I'm a little overly focused on these things. She is a little less so. Well, I didn't mean to quite do that. What am I trying to do here? All right. So tomorrow, guys, I had a mic issue in the beginning. If you join us at any point later, so I unplugged my mic, replugged it. It was fine, but I was running on D Live. I figured out how to do that, and Entropy. So there will be various platforms to look at, and of course on Entropy you can say stuff you can't say in my YouTube chat. I'm not saying that you guys want to get that spicy, but you can also donate, which is a huge advantage. Helps me out. I'm going to need diaper money, guys. We're basically a one family income right now because it makes more sense. It makes more sense because this is taking charge and taking control of our lives instead of doing what the rest of the world does. So my wife makes decent enough money, we'll get by. But of course, there are things that we wish to expand into. We're expanding our family. We do have some debt, you know. I have a mortgage. I did check out my my house the other day though. It's gained about 50 grand in value, so that's cool. Um, though I don't ever plan to sell it. I want to make it, you know, an Airbnb or something at some point. In any case, thanks for sticking with me, guys. Those of you that did or joining me, even if you've joined later, go back, watch in the beginning. Again, I apologize if it's a little rough. Streaming for myself is a little new. I do it over on the Ins Justify the Memes, but all I have to do is join. Tank does all the button pushing. So it's up in the air. But I've thought about it. People have asked me about it. It's a little bit easier to put together. I can sit here and ramble for 2 hours instead of having to do a bunch of research for an hour or two, which I'm usually doing it all the time anyways, but whatever. And then trying to get it on my computer, I can kind of pull it up in real time. I like going with the flow. I like a flow of consciousness style. It's kind of how I am, right? If you guys hadn't figured. So anyways, I'll be back here tomorrow at 3 p.m. If you guys don't catch me then, of course, you can rewatch it, but that is 3 p.m. Eastern, by the way. And we'll go over the farewell address again, and we'll probably start from the very beginning and go to the most important sections as well and see how everything I was talking about with scaling and homogeny amongst the people have eroded away over time. I don't know. Any parting shots? I'm trying to think, guys. Give me a second. I do appreciate you all watching. Please, if you are new and you like any of this, go look at my other content. Like, share, subscribe. You know, the thing, man. I'm in a waiting room. I like the live casts. Okay. Shelly likes the live cast, she's saying. Okay. Yeah, well, it's really not any different. Before I just hit record and I had a bunch of articles or whatever to read and, you know, I went on my rants and now it's just streaming. So, again, should be up on D-Line and Entropy tomorrow. Those links were in the description. I was originally, but with the mic being echoey in the beginning, technical difficulties, I didn't know what it was. I don't know, guys. I'll get used to it. In a month, I'll be an expert. So, with all that said, guys, it's been all -1. I appreciate you watching. Also, that was the other thing I wanted to say. On Sunday at 3 p.m., the Ends Justify the Memes, the other channel of mine, will be live with a call-in show. We will not be suffering idiots again. That was not my fault, per se, because more or less I'm the boss, and Tank didn't listen. So I have a long drive to go down and, you know, smack him across the head. So he got it though. He got it. He I think he's come around to it. And I know you guys in the chat were sharp about that guy too. You picked up on his vibe pretty quick. So we're still trying to figure that out. But more or less, we want to talk to you all. We want you all to be able to express your thoughts. So Sundays, 3 p.m., Ends Justify the Memes call-in show. And maybe I'll run some memes too, because I got all kinds of leftover. I always have memes, guys. You don't know the work I put into the meme mining. Anyways, with all that said, this has been all -1, and I wish you all well.